All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am with my guest this week, a guy I'm very excited to speak with, one Dan CATES, JUNGLEMAN. Very exciting news. You have just launched a podcast. I just listened to it literally within the last hour so that I was prepared for this interview. And you had a stellar guest. You're my stellar guest on the PokerNews podcast right now. But let's get into it, man. You launched a podcast. It's called the Winning the Game of Life. What inspired you to do this, and what inspired you to get Phil Hellmuth as your first guest?
A few things. So what inspired me to do this was, for a long time, I've been looking for ways to expand my career beyond poker. And it's kind of common sense, or it's intuitive, that it makes sense to do this in a way that doesn't exactly forget about poker entirely, because that's my skill set and asset, and to just branch into something else, or something that has the capacity to go into many different fields. And one thing that, you could say thing that can go into many different fields is just being able to connect with different kinds of people that are possibly relevant to poker or other kinds of fields that at least I'm interested in. So there's that. Podcast is one way of doing that. That doesn't require my full attention, so that's nice too. And it happened to be presented to me in a way that can be streamlined, that I didn't have to figure out all the details and kinks of it. And another thing was, I wanted to be better as a host and better as someone who was asking deep questions, because I have probably an aptitude for that kind of conversation compared to different other kinds of conversations. So it worked in that way as well, and it helped me open the door to meeting lots of different people. And I also am interested in the general direction of finding a way to help the world, to provide something good for the world in a way that is, how do we say, collectively beneficial to
Sure.
a wide audience. And presenting life outside of poker, etc., as something like a game works pretty well in that direction. It also opens up the discussion of how do you actually do that, which is not really an easy thing to discuss, and it's pretty complicated in of itself. But it has many interesting facets that delves into many different topics, such as psychology, social impact, spirituality, etc. So yeah, many boxes, basically what I wanted to do were ticked. There's lots of reasons, and it was simple.
And
it's the summary.
Yeah, and it seems like you got a good guest right off the bat with Phil Hellmuth. I grew up in the same area. I'm friends with Phil Hellmuth. I really am a fan, and consider him a friend, and I like his life story. And I feel like he's a great first guest for what you're trying to do, for winning the game of life, because Hellmuth obviously winning in poker, but he does have a strong life. He's been married for 32 years. He's got a family. He's in the business world, and you get into all that in the first episode. And I just felt you did a really good job of bringing the parallels of poker into life itself, and using Hellmuth. What inspired you to get him as your first guest for the new podcast?
Well, as you just mentioned, he fits pretty well exactly what I'm trying to do. He's succeeded at poker in a pretty extreme way, but he's also succeeded in outside of poker in a pretty extreme way. And he has a lot of soft skills that I think people don't really recognize, that are beneficial to business and being how do I say it, to being an asset in many social environments, I think is a good way to put it. He's also has a good already a big following and all that too, which helps build the podcast. Right. And yeah, I mean, there's just can't go wrong with Phil. And he's, I appreciate that he's helped out, and yeah, he's a nicer guy than people might think.
He really is.
Her poker persona.
Yeah, and he likes the name drop. He's got his ego. He admits it all, but you see through it, and if you look past it, he really does have a lot of wisdom, a lot of life experience, a lot of poker experience and stuff to share. The first episode was broken into 2 parts, and I understand there's going to be new episodes coming out every Saturday, and that you've already got some guests already in the can, if you will, some episodes lined up. Are you able to share with the listeners who they might expect to come on future episodes of your podcast, Winning the Game of Life?
Well, upcoming is Jeff Gross and Fedor Holtz are coming up. Just those ones I can share.
Sure.
I don't want to share everyone, but those are a couple.
Yeah, I mean,
I prepared a bunch of them before launching.
Yeah, those
Not a bunch, but like several.
All right. Well, those are good guys to have. I like them both, and I'm sure listeners will want to tune into those. Let me ask you this, and I'll share one of my own before I do. Who would you like to have on Winning the Game of Life? And I'll tell you mine, who I'd like to see you get, because I've really admired him as a poker player, but also what he's done with his life, and that's Eric Seidel. Poker Hall of Famer. Yeah, he's got a whole family life and a poker life in the respect of his peers. I would just like to know more about how he's won his game of life, if you will.
Yeah, you know what? He's a good idea. I haven't thought of him. He's been a little out of the loop, but yeah, a couple of guys. Yeah, he's one. I'd like to get some people more on the business side. Maybe Rob Young, at least short term. And who else? Yeah, people more that are connected to poker. Bill Perkins, if he doesn't hate me, would be good. I'd rather lean a little bit away from poker. I'd eventually like to do things besides poker, frankly. I mean, ideally, like really mainstream celebrities and stuff like that would be cool to get on, or people who are a bit famous or really good in particular fields that maybe are loosely tied to poker. But I have to see more what resonates with the audience,
sure,
because it's just too ridiculous of a step for me to just start interviewing, random celebrities. And also it's going to be hard for me to get these guys on unless, first of all, I have this thing is established. And secondly, if they're not necessarily interested in poker, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, a good celebrity stepping stone, if you will, you're a World Series of Poker bracelet winner, the Poker Players Champion. I'm assuming you're going to be there this summer. And Vince Vaughn, a famous Hollywood celebrity actor, is the master of ceremonies for the World Series of Poker. So I feel like you're big enough where you could say, "Hey, Vince, come on the podcast, Winning the Game of Life. Let's chat." And that would be pretty cool. I'd like to hear more from Vince Vaughn.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I'll give him a shot. I'll see what he says. Happy to have him on.
Yeah, I think listeners are going to love this podcast just because, you play in the highest stake games, you know all those guys, and I'm sure you'll reach out to a lot of them. So you have the access that a lot of people don't. I consider myself to have pretty good access in the poker world, but I can't just call up Bill Perkins or, a lot of the guys that you get to play with. So I think that's going to be, as a fanboy myself, something I'm certainly looking forward to. And then just also, to be honest, I'm looking forward to getting to know you more as well. And I think a lot of people will be interested to see you in the role of a host and as an interviewer. Right now you're the interviewee, you're my guest, but you're going to be doing my role on your show. And I think it's going to be cool to have you open up in that kind of aspect. Is that something you're looking forward to, is, being a host of a show like the Winning the Game of Life?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it mostly. I'm kind of always at the odds of my introversion, if you know what I mean. Because I've been like really a massive introvert for a lot of my life. And I always have to fight against it basically to do these kinds of things. But being a host is one of the things I want to do better. Also because I had this idea of throwing parties in perhaps multiple cities. That's again a little bit of a step, but I did a little bit of that already. And this would hopefully help me to some degree with doing that. I have an idea of what kind of parties I want to throw. But yeah, I'm mostly looking forward to it. It's hard to really push past your comfort zone in such a way that you're just always looking forward to it, if you know what I mean. It's like kind of exhausting to always do that.
It begs the question, and I know listeners and viewers would hate me if I didn't ask. You said you have an idea of what kind of parties you want to throw. Can you let us know? I'm guessing they're not board game parties. I mean, I remember the one video you released. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking maybe more parties that are a little more wild.
Actually, no. I think I want to go in the classy direction for a few reasons. Although, how do I explain? Yeah, I don't really, it's hard for me to really rule out parties that are more explicit just because I don't know, I can't put my finger on why, but for one thing is for sure is those parties rule out a lot of people that I want to attract. But that in of itself, I don't find that much issue with. I have to think about it more clearly. But what I have decided, I've actually done this a bit. I ended up having like a house in London that ended up becoming like a club, and the parties were really well known for a brief period of time. They actually were spoken about in North Hampstead and stuff. So I have some experience actually doing this. And I ultimately decided that definitely having that many people is not a good idea, at least for the moment. It might make sense if I was trying to like build some kind of like really well-known name, but I decided basically I want to have more intimate things and more private things with more of a specialty. In fact, one of my guests, Fedor, has already done that, and I decided it would be a good idea to try to emulate whatever he's done. And I did it a little bit, but it requires more work because with everything, everything's more complicated than you would think. And yeah, I made a few mistakes along the way, but it probably won't be too hard to actually do.
You mentioned London. I see you in Vegas, the World Series. I understand you're in Ghana right now. What takes you there? And like, do you have a home, or do you just travel from place to place like a poker nomad?
I've been nomading for a long time, but honestly, it's driving me a little bit crazy for a few reasons. I need another. I need bases. I have Dubai as a base for all sorts of reasons, for about 5 reasons or more, and then I'm gonna have a base in the U.S. somewhere. It was Vegas, but uh, Vegas isn't really that useful. I find I'm probably gonna have it in Miami or Austin is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, very nice. And will you be at the World Series of Poker this summer in Vegas? Can we expect to see you there?
Yeah, I will be defending my title as the winner of the Poker Players Championship. I can't let them just win it for free. I got to put up a fight at the very least. And a couple of my friends had a dream that I won the main event. So that's enough for me. I guess I'm gonna win the main. Someone has to do it. And yeah, I'm gonna play the main. Like I have to, I'm in the business of making dreams come true. So there you go. I'm doing it for the couple friends of mine that had that dream. And secondly, you know, a little bit for me too, but I will, if I win, of course, like last time when I won the Poker Players Championship, I did do some charity right away with the turkey drives. If I win the main, I'll do something much bigger with more of a splash. And when I win, excuse me, have to fulfill magic,
Yeah,
however magic works.
you got
Anyway,
will it into
um,
existence.
yeah, something like that.
Well,
And what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. I was just gonna say charity is one thing, although I've lately realized that social enterprise is really the way to go. Go ahead.
well, I mean, we can elaborate on that. What made you realize that that was the way to go?
A couple things. I think there's a little bit more of this thought process to continue on with, but it basically goes back to the old adage: give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Uh, Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. And well, it's even more than that because basically charity is more of a band-aid solution. It looks good and it can inspire, and it is, and it can be good done in the right way, but it has to be selective and it has to be, yeah, you can't just like keep doing it, if you know what I mean. You can't just like keep helping someone because then they become dependent on
Sure.
you. You have to find a way to help people support themselves and to create that sort of process. And that's what business does, social enterprise does. And it also allows you to scale or to continue doing this. It also benefits you as well, which is good, because if you do this in the first place, that tends to imply you're going to keep doing it, because it's like the step in the same direction, right? As long as it doesn't occupy too much time. A continuation of that thought process would be, well, you want to teach someone to continuously become a better person, more and more so somehow. And probably the answer to that is something beyond social enterprise. It may just simply be something like spirituality, but I've never seen someone refer to it in this kind of way. But that appears to be, the answer appears to be somewhere in there.
Well, I mean, it's the podcast is kind of an echo of what we're just talking about, winning the game of life. It's a podcast about how we can all collectively help everyone in the world. Your aim is to highlight the exciting and interesting world of professional poker players and learn how those in more fortunate situations can help others. So there's going to be new episodes every Saturday. You're going to talk to some of the best guests in the game of poker, and hopefully in the larger mainstream and celebrities worlds as well. And you can find the first 2 episodes with Phil Hellmuth available right now on all platforms. That's Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, etc. Dan, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me, to share with the listeners of PokerNews what you're doing. And we really appreciate the time, and I'm excited to listen to more episodes.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on, and excited to bring you more episodes.